Dog Mom Knits YouTube channel. This is part 4 of how to knit a dishcloth. Today I am going to show you how to bind off your work in progress so that you will have a finished knitted object. So part 1 of this video series was how to cast on. Part 2 was how to knit the knit stitch. Part 3 was how to read and knit a pattern. And at the end of part 3, at the end of that video, we were looking at this pattern for the garter stitch dishcloth, which I have linked down below. And we had cast on 40 stitches, and you were going to knit 40 rows of garter stitch, which means to knit every stitch on each row. So hopefully this is where you are at in your progress. And so now we are going to step 3, which is the final step of the pattern, which is to bind off 40 stitches. So right now, sorry, I'm kind of caught up on my needles. Right now I have my project on one of my needles. I have 40 stitches across and I have 40 rows down. I have my row counter here showing me that I am on 40 rounds. And so I am done knitting. And now the only step that I have left is to bind off. To bind off means to take the stitches off the needles. And if you remember, I talked in the knit stitch video about how knitting is just essentially a series of loops. When you take this last stitch off the needle, you need to close the loop so that the loops don't just unravel on themselves all the way back down to the beginning, which is what will happen if you don't close them off. So that's what we're going to do. Bind off. We're going to close off these loops and have a finished object. So to start our bind off, we are going to start like we would any other row of knitting. So right now the tip of my needle is pointed to the left, but in order to work it, I need to turn it so that the tip of my needle is facing right. This way. I have my working needle ready to go. So I'm just going to get myself into position and show you guys how to bind off. So, first step is to give myself some yarn to work with, is to knit the first stitch, just like you have been. Second step, knit the second stitch. Okay, so when you have 2 stitches on your working needle, on the needle that is in your right hand, you are going to bind off the stitch that is furthest away from the tip. And the way you are going to do that is you are going to insert, sorry guys, there we go. You are going to insert your needle into that stitch, pull it up and off the needle. And then you want to tighten this one up just a little bit. Don't go crazy. Okay, so knit. Now that you have 2 stitches on this needle, you're going to take this one, the one that's furthest away from the tip. You can use your pointer finger to push this stitch that's staying to kind of help secure it. Use your thumb to help secure this one. And you are going to simply pull it off the needle. So knit. You're going to scoop into that stitch and pull it off. Knit. And then go into this stitch. I tend to use my pointer finger to hold on to the one that I don't want to leave my needle and pull it off. So I'll show that from a little further away so you can see the whole motion. So you're going to knit one, and when you have 2 stitches on the needle, you're going to go into the stitch that's furthest away from the tip. Use your pointer to hold on to the stitch that you don't want to leave the needle. Whoops. And bind off. Knit. You can pull down like I just did. I wanted that stitch to elongate so it'd be easier to get my needle into it. So I just pulled it so that there's distance for me to get that needle in there. Then you go up and over. Knit. Up and over. Knit. Oops. Up and over. So I'm going to speed this up and show you guys how to bind off that last stitch, which is always just a little bit different. Okay, so I have 1 stitch on my working needle, 2 stitches left to bind off. So I'm going to bind off that one like I always do. And then I'm going to knit this one. Now this is going to leave me with 1 stitch when I bind off these two, with this one, excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and bind this one off. Oops, sorry, I took that out of frame. So you bind that off. This needle is now clear. This was my left needle. It's now clear. So I can just set that aside. And you are going to take your needle and you are going to stretch that stitch. So all I did was just lift the needle away from the project to elongate that stitch, and then you can pull out that needle. And then you're going to grab a pair of scissors and you are going to cut your yarn close to, so my loop is here. I'm not cutting the loop itself. I'm cutting the yarn that's coming away from the loop over towards the ball of yarn. Okay, so I just cut that. And I'm going to take this end and I'm going to pass it through the loop and then just pull to tighten up that stitch. Ta-da! There's your bind off. Your cast on is over here on this end. And you are done knitting. So we do have these ends. There are 2 ends attached to our project, one from our cast on and one from our bind off, that we are going to deal with in the next part of this video series.